What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the latest episode of our podcast, Mass Media Hysteria. My name is Court. I will be your host for the duration. Chris is not here today. He was supposed to be here. He was going to be here. He went to go see Dune. Something went wrong with the tickets, and he's probably in the theater now, hopefully enjoying himself. So you're just stuck with myself and Andris today. Andris, it looks like you have something you want to say.
Yeah, no, what happened was the movie's like 8 hours, so
Right.
he's still there right now.
Yeah.
By the time this airs, the credits will start rolling.
Right, exactly. But yeah, again, of course, we have Andris back this week.
Howdy.
And we're gonna do a bit of a shorter show today. Obviously, as you can tell, this is our Halloween show. I put in a lot of work into my costume. I'm Maleficent, I guess. I'm a guy who went to a dollar store because they didn't have time for anything else. Andris, do you want to tell us what you're dressed as tonight?
Yes, I am the Ghost of Retail Past. It's a Blockbuster management shirt, and they're not around anymore.
Did you used to manage a Blockbuster?
I wish. I really wanted to work at a Blockbuster, but by the time I started getting jobs, they went out of business. So I was like, well, that's the end of that.
I always wanted to work in a movie store. I did the second best thing. I worked in a record store, so that was cool.
That's snazzy.
Indeed. And it had a great name. It was called Sonic Temple.
That's an awesome name.
Right. So anyway, we're going to have 3 topics here today. First, unfortunately, we have to talk about the tragic death of Helena Hutchins, who was the cinematography on the new Alec Baldwin Western film called Rust. We're going to talk a little bit about what went down there. Then we're going to move on and do a full spoilers review of Dune, the new Denis Villeneuve film, which we have now both seen. And then finally, because it is sort of the Halloween show, we decided we wanted to talk about a horror movie that we both really, really enjoy. And I threw this one out there because this past summer was actually the 40th anniversary of An American Werewolf in London, a freaking classic. So we're gonna wax a little bit nostalgic on that, and we'll probably spoil some stuff. So maybe don't watch this if you haven't seen it, and go see it. It's so good. I got to see it in the theater a few years ago. John Landis was there, gave a little talk. It was very cool. Thanks, Nimmy. So yeah, of course we want to, as per usual, encourage you to drop a like on this video. If you do enjoy it, it just helps the video reach more people, helps the channel grow. Of course, we would love it if you would jump into the comments and tell us what you thought of the topics we are going to talk about here today. And of course, if you are of the mind that we are 2 gentlemen with faces for radio, you can always get audio only versions of this podcast at places like Spotify and Google Podcasts. So definitely check that out if that's more up your alley. So first, we're going to talk about, of course, the other day, Alec Baldwin is shooting this new film, Rust. It's a Western. I believe they're shooting in New Mexico. And basically, he was handed a prop gun, was told that it was a cold gun, which they say, it's not loaded with actual rounds. And it went off. And unfortunately, it hit the film's cinematographer, Helena Hutchins, went through her body and into the director, whose name I believe is Joel Souza. Let me just double check that.
Yeah,
Joel Souza. I believe they were both rushed to the hospital. Helena Hutchins, who was a wife and mother of one, was pronounced dead on the scene. And now, of course, there's going to be an investigation, obviously, as there should be. And Alec Baldwin has reached out to her family. I'm told he had breakfast with her husband and son today. But of course, there's going to be a lot of talk of Onset Safety, and some things have come out. I don't know, Andris, if you read about this, but I believe it was a day or two before, maybe even the day, some of the crew actually staged a walkout on this film because there were unsafe practices that were going on, which there's just no excuse for. And even the assistant director has like a history of having unsafe sets, blocked emergency exits, things like that. Andris, I'll ask you first, how did you, this news just broke, I believe 2 days ago. What was your sort of initial response?
It's horrifying because, there is a bit of a history of on-set blanks, obviously the most famous one would be Crow.
Yep.
which killed Brandon Lee. It's just, it's scary because it's like that happened over 20 years ago, and then here in 2021, these guns that shoot blanks are still claiming victims from time to time. It's just, it's like how it should have gotten, you know what I'm saying? Like it's the standards should have gotten better by now.
Right. Well, and
Um,
there's even speaking of John Landis, actually, on the set of his Twilight Zone movie,
oh yeah.
a helicopter crashed and killed an actor and like two children, which is absolutely mind-boggling.
Yeah.
Now it's unclear as of yet, from the last I checked anyway, what the actual projectile in this situation was. Some people were saying that this is unsubstantiated at last check, but some people were claiming that some of the crew had been seen playing with this prop gun out in the desert, so it's possible maybe a rock could have gotten lodged in the barrel or something like that. Whether or not it was a blank or a real bullet, I guess is unclear as of yet. But it really is, in what I would imagine to be up to the props master or whomever takes care of these weapons to be checking it,
Yeah.
before every single take. And if you're saying cold gun, you have to know that you've done your homework and it's safe to use. And sorry, go ahead.
It's just got me wondering, like, maybe it's time to start a different method of portraying guns on screen. Maybe we should just not use real firearms in films.
Right.
Because, like, I don't think people realize, I learned this, there's this mini series on Shudder that it was like, it covers like different cursed films. And
Okay.
when they were talking about The Crow and what happened, I mean, I was shocked when I discovered they use real guns. It's just they're using blanks, which
Right.
are, they don't have anything real in them, but they do go off on set. And it's kind of like, hey, maybe that's not a good idea.
Right.
Because people have died.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a buddy of mine actually posted this on Facebook today, and I thought it was worth a read. That's from a gentleman named Jeff Scott, who clearly works in the film industry. It seems like he's kind of a visual effects guy.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not too long, but I think it bears a quick read. He writes, Helena Hutchins should be alive. There is absolutely no need for blank firing guns on set ever. It's not the 1930s. And then he sort of, here are arguments that people make why they should use them, and then he refutes them. So he says, but it helps the actor. No, it fucking doesn't. In fact, most actors close their eyes when they squeeze a trigger, and I have to open them digitally. It's better to capture it in camera. Nope. 2/3 of all muzzle flashes aren't captured due to the camera shutter, and I have to add it digitally. It's better for interactive lighting. Nope. 2/3 of all muzzle flashes aren't captured due to the camera shutter, and I have to paint it in. It's better for the other actors to react to. Nope. Someone clapping two pieces of wood together works perfectly fine. I've seen it. It's perfectly safe. Clearly, it's fucking not. It's how we've always done it. So fucking what? Adapt or quit.
Yeah.
I think that puts it into perspective really quite well.
I agree entirely. It's like, as you said, it's not the 30s anymore. It's 2021. Come on, we have practical effects. We got digital effects. We have means of doing this without endangering our cast and crew.
Well, and not to mention, like when I was a teenager, I went to like an army surplus store, and I bought. It was essentially a BB gun, but it was designed to look like a Glock. It was plastic. It even had the clip that came out and whatever. It just fired these little plastic BBs.
Yeah,
that thing looks so fucking real, except for the fact that like the plastic, but a quick paint job, that thing would look 100% real.
Yeah.
Why are we using real guns? It doesn't make sense to me.
As I said, I'm shocked that we are, because I always thought, I was like, oh, well, yeah, they've got props masters, so clearly they're fabricating. No, they aren't. Maybe it's time to change.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think I can say this for the both of us. Our hearts go out to the cast and crew that were affected by this. Absolutely. It's tragic. It's horrific. And I hope this is the catalyst that changes things, because this is not okay.
Right. And it's interesting because this is just coming on the heels of like IATSE making that deal with the AMPTP, which we've been talking about for a couple of weeks now,
Yeah.
because one of the things they were talking about is the overworking, the way too many hours. Safety does really start taking a back seat because everyone's so exhausted, and I imagine that could have been at play here as well.
Absolutely.
And I'm sure whatever the terms of that deal that they made, I'm sure they probably haven't come to fruition yet. So yeah, there will be an investigation, and I do imagine that if it's found to be negligence or what have you, there will be charges against the producers, or possibly lawsuits or whatever. So we'll have to see where this goes. But yeah, of course, just it's just awful. It's so very sad. And
I feel terrible for Alec Baldwin because he's a nice guy, and
right. And like a pretty staunch anti-gun guy too, right?
Yeah. So for this to happen to him, it's just, that's a very traumatic thing for, I mean, anybody obviously, but especially for an actor, because it's like you go on set expecting to be able to, like, everything will be perfect. I'm in a safe environment. Holy crap.
The other side of it too, though, is he's also a producer on the movie, which means, he is potentially culpable for, maybe he didn't hire the right guy, or I don't know. So we'll see what happens with this going forward. I'm sure we'll talk about it on the show once there is some news. But again, terrible story, and we wish all the best for everyone involved.
Absolutely.
And yeah, so we are going to move on. We are going to talk. Oh, go ahead.
Before we do that, though, I think we need a bit of a palate cleanse.
Okay, excellent.
I am not alone in the room, ladies and gentlemen of the YouTube and the podcasts.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to introduce a new contributor, co-host of sorts. It's my little puppy. Her name is Wednesday, and she's dressed in a costume.
What is the costume? I can't tell.
I'm trying to. She hates this costume.
Okay.
It's a little sweetie, move your head. It's a little guitar. She's a little 80s rocker.
Nice.
So this is Wednesday. She is a lapdog. Say hello. She said hello, I'm sure. And yeah.
People who are listening to the podcast are really missing out, but she's very cute. She's very cute.
Look at the cuteness.
Oh, we look forward to having her on the show again in the future. Chris is really missing out too.
Yes, I tried to get her to say quite liked it on cue, but we've only had her for a day, so
yeah, well, that'll do it. So we are going to talk about Denis Villeneuve's Dune, based on the novel by Frank Herbert. Excuse me. This has been, I believe this movie was originally supposed to come out last year, but of course, pandemic and everything got pushed back. And I've never read the book. I've never seen the David Lynch version or the other miniseries, so I didn't really know much about it. I knew sort of the basic idea of the plot. But I was really looking forward to this. For one, big fan of Denis Villeneuve, and for two, it just looked really cool. Where was your anticipation for this going in?
Well, I've got cousins who, one of my cousins is like a huge Dune fan. She's been posting all about it, so it's kind of always been like in the ether, as it were. I've seen the David Lynch film, but I was like 7. I think I tried rewatching it about a decade ago. I can't remember. It was okay, I've never seen the miniseries either. But going into this one, I was like, all right, let's see what's going on here. Do you want to do reactions first, or should I say what?
No, you go ahead. You go ahead.
Okay. I almost said quite liked it. No, I found it quite enjoyable. Very epic, very large scale.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of wish it wasn't part 1 of I don't know how many, because it's almost a 3-hour film. But yeah, it was a fun, long, epic, substance-filled sci-fi, ambitious, and that's what's going on there.
Yeah, I'm with you. I really liked it. I don't know that it's my favorite movie of the year, but I really liked it. It's got a crazy cast, like just a stacked cast. Um, again, in scope, it's just it's a huge film.
Mm-hmm.
I sort of described it as like a mix of like Star Wars and Game of Thrones, even though I know the book came before both of those things, but it really is like you sort of have, much like Game of Thrones, you have these sort of warring houses of like nobles of nobility and political intrigue and machinations and all that. And then you have
on an intergalactic scale.
yeah. And then you have the character of Paul, who's like, it's definitely like the hero's journey, but he also has, kind of Jedi mind tricks and what have you. I really liked it, and I think I said off the top, but we are going to spoil stuff. We're not going to go beat through the whole movie because we'd be here for 2.5 hours.
By the time we finished doing a beat by beat thing, Chris would be able to contribute because
right,
he'd be
right, exactly.
He's still in the theater right now, folks.
Yeah,
I hope he has plenty of water.
Indeed. So I guess let's talk about the cast first.
Okay.
Was there anyone specifically who stood out to you in a good way or a bad way?
I just kept being like, wait, is that? Oh my God, it is. Because as you said, it's like a star-studded cast of like who's who of not like, I don't want to say A-listers necessarily. You know what I mean? It's not like, but like really prominent actors and actresses.
Yeah.
Like I was like, wait, is that Stellan Skarsgård? And it was.
That took me a second. Yep.
I was like, that face looks familiar, and I was like, he didn't method act this by gaining all that weight, did he? Because that's not healthy.
No.
Some of these method actors go crazy with that stuff, but fortunately, folks, it's okay. He did not. It was makeup.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, overall, solid cast. Nobody really stood out for me. But nobody stank the place up, as it were.
Yeah, I think the whole cast was like really, really solid. For me, oddly, and I said oddly in my spoiler-free review too. I don't know why it's odd, but one of my favorite performances in the movie was actually Jason Momoa. And I mean, I like Jason Momoa, but because the movie is so, like, I don't want to say drab, but because it's so like incredibly serious the whole time.
It's not drab, but it's so invested in what it is that it doesn't have that degree of familiarity.
Okay.
Would you say that?
I can see that. Yeah.
Yeah.
But like there are not a lot of jokes in this movie, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Whereas Jason Momoa is kind of he's probably the funnest character in the movie, because this movie is not, when I say not fun, I don't mean not good, but it's not, it's just very, very serious. But he's got a kind of a relationship with Timothy Chalamet's Paul, that's kind of like, he's kind of like an uncle or a confidant or whatever, but a buddy.
Yeah.
And I really liked the dynamic there. I quite liked Oscar Isaac in here.
Oh yeah.
I'm a fan of his. I'm a fan of Rebecca Ferguson, so that was good. Yeah, let's talk about one thing I really do want to discuss is
yes.
I thought the production design in this movie was unreal.
Oh yeah. I will say a lot of modern sci-fi films have this detriment of being a little too familiar. You know what I mean?
Okay.
This is otherworldly. Like there's no location where you're like, oh, they just dressed up with a few futuristic cars. No, this is complete alien, which I love. I mean, the world is so rich in this film.
Yeah.
That, it kind of excuses the nearly 3-hour runtime because you're just soaking in these visuals.
Yeah. I mean, this is a stunning movie to look at.
Yeah.
It's very washed out. It's not super colorful, but like,
no, it's not in a detrimental way. Like it serves the film well enough. The only complaint I have on the visuals is I watched it on HBO Max, and I had to tinker with the TV settings because it gets so dark.
Yeah.
Like there's just I'm like, I hear words, but I was getting flashbacks to 2014's Godzilla, where like you can hear things happening, but it's just a black screen. And I'm like, come on, guys. What? I get that it's supposed to be like midnight and they're inside of a valley or wherever they were in that desert planet, but like I like seeing things too.
Yeah. Well, and I like hearing things, and that was one issue that I had. And I don't know if this was the sound mix or if this was an issue at my theater or what, or maybe it was intended by the director, but there were certain lines of dialogue that I could not understand.
Yeah.
Again, maybe it was purposeful. But I would have liked to have heard them.
Yeah.
But yeah, visually this thing is stunning. I mean, they did, I'm sure a lot of it was soundstage and green screen, but they did like the deserts of Arrakis. I believe they shot in Jordan. And what was the Atreides homeworld? I think it was called like Caladan or something.
Caladan, I think.
Yeah, they shot that in like Norway, which was gorgeous.
Oh yeah. They used the locations well enough where it looked like realistic and tangible, but it didn't look like, oh, they're shooting there, you know what I mean? Like, it was right. They mixed it up enough where you weren't like, oops, okay, good, that was my headphone cable. Yeah,
I would agree. And I loved like the designs of like the ships and the weapons and the tech, like all that was really cool. One thing I did find odd, and I'm sure this is just straight from the book, but like you guys have like the craziest high tech shit and you're fighting with swords. That's weird to me.
Swords and like dragonfly helicopters.
Yeah. I love that dragonfly helicopter though. That was really cool.
Yeah.
Also the sound design in this movie was top notch.
Oh, absolutely.
What did you think of the sandworm?
You mean the sphincter worm?
Yes.
There's my notes. I would like to see more of it because it looks like a giant sand sphincter. I'm like, I'm sure it's supposed to be, because I mean, even in like the 1984 David Lynch's film, The Worm looks great. I was getting, and I hate saying this because Tremors came after it, but they were like, oh, we got to watch the vibrations. I'm like, where's the Kevin Bacon?
Yep. I was originally, for the non-spoiler review, I was going to use a clip of Tremors for my rating system, but then I went with Beetlejuice instead because it's a better movie. And it also has Sandworm, so you know, it's a better movie for me. I love Beetlejuice.
I love Tremors.
That's fair. That's fair. What was I gonna say? I lost my train of thought. Are there any like story beats that stood out to you that you want to talk about, or?
I feel like there should have been more story beats to this.
Okay.
Because I feel like, you know, by the time you reach the end and he's accepted, we're doing spoilers, so he's accepted by the tribe, the Fremen, I think they were called. That happens and they go off on an adventure and you're like, I want to see the adventure.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, I liked that it felt, because we knew this was going to be a part one, presumably of two.
Yeah.
Because there are a number of Dune books, but I think the idea was Dune 1 and 2 would be the first book.
Yeah.
The movie does find, like, for me, a pretty satisfying stopping point. Like it doesn't feel jarring in that it just like stops suddenly. Like it comes to a conclusion of sorts. But now I'm like, okay, give me part two. I want to see part two, but not only is part two not even in production yet, it hasn't been greenlit by the studio yet. I would imagine Denis Villeneuve probably has the screenplay for it, or at least the meat of it.
I hope he gets to, because I mean, this needs, you know, that's part of the risk of doing something that's like a multi-part film. It's like you're presenting something, it's not guaranteed that you're gonna get greenlit. That's kind of a trapping of modern films, is they go for the franchises, and it's like, no, don't make things, you know. And as you said, it does like have a satisfactory close, but I feel like I wanted something just a little more something before it goes away.
Right.
Even if it would have put the film into 3-hour territory, I would have been fine with it.
Well, and this is the thing, like the movie had a production budget of, I think it was like 125 million, or no, it's 165 million.
That's a lot of money.
It's a lot of money. So it's going to have to make at least like twice that to be really profitable. And with the pandemic and them releasing it day and date on HBO Max, I don't know, man. I think
know.
I think, I mean, I'm sure Warner Brothers will look at the HBO Max numbers to see if a lot of people are watching it, because at least they could then gauge audience interest.
Yeah.
Because presumably, hopefully, if they greenlight part 2, by the time it's coming out, hopefully this pandemic will be pretty much over. I would
Yeah.
imagine. I'm no virologist.
I mean, it's gonna take a few years for them to make part 2. So
Yeah,
I think it's a safe bet to say by then we'll have enough boosters out to be like, oh, it's fine. Take a few days off. You got the Rona.
I think at the very least, I mean, for the most part, and let me pull up Rotten Tomatoes here, but I think for the most part, people are really liking this movie.
Yeah.
Which is good.
I will say it's good. We both went into this blind, basically.
Yeah.
And we both enjoyed it. That's good because we're kind of representing the casual film goer.
Yeah.
Good stepping point, get ready for a runtime, but it's going to be better than your experience with The Hobbit. No offense to The Hobbit.
Hell yeah. Those movies make me so angry.
It's like, here's 40 minutes of dwarves singing.
Not to mention, like, you make 3 movies that were so good. You make 3 movies that were so bad. And it could have been 1 movie. I'm getting off topic. But looking at Rotten Tomatoes, 82% fresh from critics, which is really good. And that's out of 324 reviews.
That's really good.
And the audience score is 91%. So
that's critical.
Yep.
It's interesting though. I don't know how much do you know about, because we don't know the franchise, like we don't know the Dune books themselves, but how much do you know about the attempts to make this into something? It's fascinating.
Not a whole lot.
It's a very interesting franchise because it's very I don't want to say monumental, but it's like it's one of those that you're like, oh yeah, you know it as well as like Star Trek or Star Wars. You hear Dune, you know what it is. But interestingly enough, every time they've tried to adapt it for something, they run into problems. David Lynch's film, it had problems with production. There was Darren Aronofsky, I think was his name.
Oh, okay.
Or maybe it's someone else. Somebody was trying to make, let me look it up. I don't want to say Darren Aronofsky, just in case. I know it's someone with a name, because people have names.
It's true.
Darren
Aronofsky was the guy who was going to make Batman before Nolan came in to do Begins, though.
I didn't know that.
He was doing an adaptation of Batman Year One. I have read the screenplay. It's fucking weird.
I wouldn't expect any less from Aronofsky.
Indeed.
Who was it? When you look up with things on Wikipedia, be careful what you look up, because I'm getting the full history of the rise of the Atreides here. It's like, that's great. Not what I'm looking for.
Not what I'm looking for. Girl, I'll do a little dance here. Keep people do the happy dance. Do the happy dance.
That's my happy dance. I know what that's from. I love it. I love the happy dance, and I know what it's from. Thank you.
Excellent. Yes. Excellent.
Dune early stalled attempts.
Here we go. Now we're cooking with gas.
We are cooking with gas.
Mm-hmm.
No, I was totally wrong. It was in the 70s.
Okay.
Cult filmmaker Alejandro Jodorowsky.
I know the name. I'm not too familiar with him.
He tried adapting this because the book Dune, it came out in the 60s. In the 70s, Alejandro tried to make a film, and there's like a documentary that covers it, and people are like, it would have been like the greatest sci-fi film that never happened. I've never seen it myself, but people who've seen it, who know about Dune, they mention it. Okay. So now we have this one. It's fascinating how this franchise is just, so difficult to peg.
Right.
Because now it's like, well, don't look at the box office numbers, please. Make a second one, please. We want this.
Yeah.
But once again, we're gonna see what happens in the next. How soon do you think they're gonna make the announcement?
I don't know. I mean, okay. I don't know when they would make the announcement. I'm pretty sure they would probably make the deal with Villeneuve within, like, my guess would be like within maybe 3 months.
Okay.
Once it's kind of done its full theatrical run and they can look at the numbers
Yeah.
on HBO Max. And again, sometimes they sit on news like that and wait to announce it until they're good and ready. But
It is fascinating though, because I mean, there have been times like they'll greenlight things like the day before a premiere happens. We haven't, as far as I know, we haven't heard any announcement for a part 2 yet. I'm
no,
gonna
not that
say
I've
it.
heard.
I'm saying it though. Check this out. Knock on wood. Here's hoping.
Yep. Yeah, I'm into it.
That's how sold I am on this. Let's talk about visuals just a bit. Oh my goodness. Good thing we are swearing boys, because that would have been bleeped. On accident. Anyway, what kind of influences did you pick up on as far as what you were seeing? And I know you mentioned Star Wars. What else did you pick up on?
Well, actually, I got a little bit of Blade Runner.
Okay.
Which of course Denis Villeneuve also did Blade Runner 2049 a couple years ago. To be honest, I haven't really given it a lot of thought.
Okay.
But why don't you tell me what you got?
It's interesting you should say that, because I was picking up on Ridley Scott vibes heavily.
Right.
Like you had Blade Runner, there was a pinch of Aliens, or Alien, I'd have to say, because Aliens is James Cameron, as we all know. Yeah. I will say also, even though I didn't like the films, I was getting slight Prometheus vibes at times.
I could totally see that. I could totally see that. Yeah.
And it's weird for me to say that, because I've seen Prometheus once or twice. I don't like the film. I never saw Covenant, just because I'm like, stop with these alien films, guys. But I could see it. I was like, I'm picking up on. And then yes, Star Wars, of course. But yeah, it's familiar, but I don't want to say this as a detriment. I don't want anybody to be like, oh, it's just gonna be another one. This is very much its own thing.
Yeah.
But yeah.
All right. Well, do you have any other specific things you want to bring up, or should we move on?
I'm still processing it. I had to cut this movie in two because I was exhausted last night. I did sound, for you guys that wouldn't know because you're not in the group chat, because we talk stuff. I did a concert last night. I did sound for a concert. It was an adventure, and got home. And we have a new adopted puppy. She watched it in my lap. It was the cutest thing. And sometimes she'd peek her little head up and watch the sandworms coming by. And I'm like,
nice.
Oh, she is taking after me already.
Nice.
But I got nothing else really.
Right.
I'd recommend it though.
Absolutely.
I'm not gonna say film of the year. Malignant still has it as the film of the year, because this didn't have the wonderful things. And have you seen it yet, Court?
Nope, not yet. I haven't had time. I would also absolutely recommend Dune. And I would say, as I said in my other review, if you are able to go see it in the theater and you're comfortable going to see it in the theater, see it in the theater, because it's such a visual spectacle. Biggest screen you can find, biggest sound system you can find. No, go ahead.
And if you're seeing it at home, make sure to fidget with those television settings, because they like making it so dark. It's only like 20% of the film, I'd say 15 to 20. It's not a lot. The majority of it is very well lit, but get ready. If you love fidgeting with those settings, oh man.
Indeed. All right, so we're going to move on to our final topic of the day, which of course is the seminal werewolf classic, 1981, John Landis's An American Werewolf in London. I want to debut this on the show for the first time.
Ooh-wee. Hot shirt takes coming in. That is a beautiful shirt. I love it.
Very, very proud of myself for having the fortitude to buy this shirt. That didn't make any sense, but I went ahead and said it anyway. So An American Werewolf in London it's a horror comedy. It stars Jenny Agutter, David Naughton, Griffin Dunn. Frank Oz has a cameo in it.
Yeah, he does.
As do the Muppets themselves, as a matter of fact. It's a wonderful, wonderful movie that is quite funny and quite scary. It has I really like the score, but I love the soundtrack. Every song on the soundtrack has moon in its title. You have
Yes.
Blue Moon. You have 3 different versions of Blue Moon. You have Bad Moon Rising. You have what's the other one? There's one more. Moon Dance by Van Morrison.
Mm-hmm.
So it's about these 2 American, I guess, 20 somethings who are sort of backpacking through London. And they end up outside of a town called East Proctor, outside of London, like out in the countryside. They go into this pub in the middle of nowhere, and they're getting really creepy vibes from the people, and the people kick them out, tell them to leave. But they say, stay on the road, keep clear of the moors, and they
Mm-hmm.
end up walking off into the moors by accident.
Of course they did.
Indeed. And
We wouldn't have a film otherwise.
right. And they get attacked by a werewolf. And one thing that has always stood out to me about this movie is the wolf's howl.
Oh,
It's not like an ooh, it's like this chilling, like blood curdling shriek. It's amazing. I love it.
Mm-hmm.
But so they get attacked by a werewolf. Jack, played by Griffin Dunn, is killed. David, played by David Naughton, is bitten. The townsfolk from the pub show up, kill the werewolf, and David wakes up in the hospital some couple weeks later. And before I go more into the plot, Andris, do you remember the first time you watched it, or what you thought of it the first time? Like, what are your sort of overall thoughts on this movie?
Absolutely, I remember it. I did some self-research, I guess. That's a weird way to put it. Anyway, I was about 11 years old. But it was 1998. What happened was my mom used to work at this department in a college. So every year, her department would send her on these trips to these locations because they would go to these congressional things and they'd all meet up. And so we used it as a method to get me and my dad to just go places. Like we traveled to San Francisco one year, we went to Washington, D.C. another, and we went to D.C. I was about 11 years old. And because my mom was always at these these meetings, me and my dad were just let loose on Washington, D.C. So, we went to the Smithsonian, we went to all the other places. I was too young to appreciate anything I was seeing, kind of want to go back. Anyway, we were at our hotel room flipping through the channels, and there's this weird werewolf movie. And we started watching it, and it was American Werewolf in London. And it just blew my mind because, at 11 in the 90s, seeing those practical effects, you know what I'm talking about. Anybody who's seen it knows what I'm talking about. Mm-hmm. That transformation sequence, it changed everything in the movie world. Because, before this, the classic way you did it was like, you'd just do a soft transition, increasing the amount of hair on an actor's face. Mm-hmm. And, this one is visceral and horrific. Rick Baker did the effects for this. And mm-hmm. This is the film that made Rick Baker a household name for practical effects.
If I remember correctly, I think I have this trivia correct. If I remember correctly, again, this film came out in 81. Yeah. The Academy actually created the award for like best makeup or best makeup effects so they could give it to Rick Baker for this movie.
Well deserved. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I mean, this movie came out in 1981. Even 2021, I have yet to see. I haven't seen every werewolf movie, but I have yet to see a better transformation than something that was done 40 years ago.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And the other interesting bit of trivia is at the same time there was a film called The Howling, mm-hmm. whose practical effects were done by Rob Bottin, who is another household name. If you've seen 1982, you know this already. If you know, John Carpenter's The Thing. That's this guy. The guys who were making American Werewolf in London, they were freaking out because they heard about the transformation sequences because they're very similar in The Howling. But fortunately, well, I don't want to say fortunately because it's kind of sad that Howling gets a little overshadowed, but it happened.
And I think I may be wrong about this, but I think Rick Baker was originally going to be working on The Howling, and then he went over to American Werewolf, and his like assistant took over I think
Yeah.
that's what happened.
Yeah,
Um,
Boteen. I think Boteen was his assistant.
okay,
I mean, if there's anyone you're gonna learn from and be the assistant to, Rick
sure.
Baker.
Yeah, and I mean, like, if you guys haven't seen the movie, again, see the movie. It's so good. But if you just want to know what we're talking about, go on YouTube, type in American Werewolf in London transformation.
Yeah,
It'll blow your mind. Like it
it
is so good.
and
And it,
the sound design that
yeah,
accentuates it, just the breaking of bones. Oh god.
it's just horrifying. Um, yeah, it's a very funny movie. It's scary. It's weird.
Mhm,
One of my it actually has one of my all-time favorite endings. When I say ending, I mean like final shot to credits
mhm.
uh of all time, which is of course um David spends a good chunk of like the third act trying to get himself arrested, trying to convince himself to kill himself because he knows he's already turned once, he's killed a bunch of people, he knows it's about to happen again, it's full moon.
And
um
everyone who he kills is like following him as a damned soul that only he can see.
Right. Yeah, I should have brought that up. His friend Jack sort of
Yeah,
comes to him. He walks the earth in limbo, and
and
Jack
he's
will.
and he just keeps decomposing with
Yeah,
every time he's brought back.
and the makeup on him is like amazing too. That first time
Fantastic.
he sees him in the hotel, the hospital, he's got those like dangling bits of flesh on his throat, and it's just
Yeah,
disgusting in a wonderful way. And
absolutely.
Jack keeps coming to him and saying, "You're going to turn into a werewolf. You need to kill yourself. We got to end the bloodline." And there's a whole like, does it have to be a silver bullet? It's like, don't be an idiot. You just have to die, man. But so towards the end of the film, he ends up meeting up with Jack and the other people he's killed in a porno theater. The movie is called See You Next Wednesday, which apparently is like a running joke in John Landis movies. Things are titled that. I didn't know that, but here we are. And then in the porno theater, he also again starts turning into a werewolf. And then the big final climax is him as a werewolf in like Piccadilly Circus, downtown London. Just absolute mayhem. Bus
Oh
is
yeah.
crashing and bites off the one guy's head. So good. But the very end of the movie, throughout the film, he's fallen in love with Jenny Agutter character, Nurse Price, Alex Price. She was his nurse, and then she let him stay with her, and they fell in love. And um, but there's this great scene, and I remember even as a little kid, because I saw my brother showed this to me when I was probably like 7 or 8.
Oh my god.
Yeah. I really enjoyed having an older brother because he would show me all this, the Lost Boys and like all that kind of stuff. I saw it really early, and I
Hell yeah.
turned out okay. You know, horror movies
So-
aren't that bad.
Hell yeah. Make a
Yeah.
channel about him.
Yeah, but so I remember thinking at the end of this movie, even as a little kid, I was like, "Oh, this is about to get so cheesy," and I was like getting mad. There's a scene where, as the werewolf, he's sort of down at the end of this dark alleyway. It's all
Mhm.
nighttime, and Alex Price, his girlfriend, when he's a human in human form, she sort of goes walking down towards him, and all the cops are lined up at the other end of the alley with their guns, their rifles, whatever. And she's walking towards him. She's saying, "Is it you? Is it you?" And then she has this moment where she goes like, "I love you, David." And the wolf kind of looks up at her, and he's just like silent. And I remember as a little kid going like, "Oh, come on, don't do this." And then the wolf growls and lunges, and the guns go off. And then it cuts to her, and she's crying. And then it cuts to his body. So he's just naked as a human again, riddled with bullets. Then it cuts to black, and it goes to the Marcel's version of Blue Moon,
Blue
which is like the
Moon.
doo-wop. Bomb, 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 bomb. It's so good. It's like this incredibly tragic, sad ending to this like incredibly up-tempo, upbeat, fun song. It is, like I said, it's one of my favorite final shot to credit transitions ever. How do you feel about the ending, Andres?
It's a great final little fuck you to the movie viewers. It's like, nope, here's a laugh. And you're
Yep.
like, Landis.
You got me, you scoundrel. And I mean, you know what, like I just want to talk about like quickly, we'll probably wrap up here fairly shortly, but I want to see if I can even just find a picture. Well, I'll edit it in post, but I love the look of the werewolf in this. One thing that I think is really cool about it, um, a lot of the old school werewolf movies, the werewolves are bipedal, like they stand on two
Yeah.
legs. They're just humanoid, just hairy and claws. And no, this thing
And-
looks like a giant wolf from hell. Like it's on all fours.
And that's what it needed to be, honestly. Like, no offense to those classic films. I just reviewed one on my channel, The Undying Monster. You know,
Plug it.
I just did. It's charming, but it's like, if we're talking about a werewolf, you know, like, just make it horrifying. Maybe,
Yeah.
you know, we can give the benefit of the doubt. Maybe they didn't want to scare the crap out of moviegoers in the 30s and 40s, or maybe they just, I can't think of a werewolf film where this was the type of werewolf before this, really.
Yeah, neither can I.
The Howling, which came out the same year, it was just 81 was just like, bam, that's werewolves from now on, folks.
Yeah.
It's interesting. But yeah, no, I love that design. And you know, what can I say? Rick Baker made it a household name.
Yep, absolutely.
Because like you go on and watch like later on, it's not an underrated film, but I've caught glimpses of it recently. If you go back to 1990, was it 1999 was Wild Wild West. I'm talking about Men in Black, the first film.
Okay.
Barry Sonnenfeld directed it. It's very Burton-esque at times, especially because they had Danny Elfman on the music. But Rick Baker did the special effects, the makeup effects for that film.
Okay.
They hold up so well. Baker is like a magician.
Yeah, he's incredible.
Yeah.
I remember there used to be a show, I think it was called like Hollywood Effects Masters or something. It was hosted by Christopher Reeve. Yeah. And they did a whole episode on An American Werewolf in London. They had Rick Baker in, and they were talking about, you know, the way the transformation sort of happens is David is standing there looking at his hand and his fingers just start like stretching.
It's not his fingers. It's his palm is going
up.
The
whole thing. Yeah.
It's just, you're like, oh God. And it's like,
yeah.
And he's like, ah.
And when you watch this behind the scenes thing, it's so cool because like the actor is standing on the shot going like this. Yeah. And then they have this fake arm up, you know, you don't see the crux of his elbow. And it's all like plungers and latex, so they're pushing it up to make it stretch. There's a shot where you see the hair growing out of his skin, which was literally they had hair in the skin and they pulled it through and they just like reversed the shot.
Oh yeah,
it's so brilliant how they put this movie together. I could go on about this flick forever, but go ahead.
But we do have to talk about one other film.
Do we? Oh, yes, we do.
Because this isn't the only film in the series.
It's true.
Some of you may remember back in the day, 1998, 1999.
Sounds about right, yep.
American Werewolf in Paris. Court, what do you think about?
Well, let me put it this way. If you don't remember the sequel, good for you. Oh, it's so bad. It's such a terrible film. We were talking in the group chat and Chris had said he'd never seen it. And
I was encouraging him to go see it. I was like, you have to see it. It's like, you know, go see it. It'll change your life.
Yeah. I mean, in a way, I said like, I was kind of trying to be funny, but I was also kind of serious. The best thing to come out of An American Werewolf in Paris is a song by the band Bush.
Yeah.
And not that I mind Bush. I liked 16 Stone. I like that album, but like, it's a terrible movie. Like they really, you know, American Werewolf in London is a horror comedy. They kind of went way harder in the comedy on this one, but it's like a really different style of comedy. It's like really kind of goofy.
Just not fitting, not appropriate for this kind of, especially a sequel to an iconic classic,
right?
Like American Werewolf in London. Should I, do you want to keep going or should I?
No, go ahead.
What I like about this film, some people refer to the late 90s as the cinematic dark ages. Okay. This film is a perfect microcosm of that phenomenon. because it's like this quintessential, hey, we have CG now, let's go
Right.
for it. Because like American Werewolf in London, it's like the benchmark for practical effects.
Yeah.
In some circles. American Werewolf in Paris is the benchmark for why we shouldn't have been doing CG in the late 90s.
Right.
Because it's so goofy and awkward. It looks like an N64 game is like being juxtaposed into a film. And fortunately, a few years ago when I finally hunted it down, it was not easy finding a copy of this film because nobody likes it.
No.
But those of you who feel like being punishing yourself, if you go to Tubi, which is illegal, they have a wonderful collection of films. You can go watch American Werewolf in Paris and then be like, wow, it really is that bad. Tubi.
I wonder if they have yeah, hang on one second. So Rotten Tomatoes, an American Werewolf in London, 88% fresh from critics. That's only 57 because, of course, it's 1981.
Yeah.
Audience score of 85% with over 100,000 ratings. And an American Werewolf in Paris has a 30% audience score and a 7% critic score, which means 7% of critics liked the movie, which is crazy to me. I don't understand how.
Yeah.
But whatever. Yeah, you're right. I mean, it's so crazy that I understand that, you know, in Hollywood, you want to take new technology and run with it and see what you can do with it. But like a movie like An American Werewolf in Paris, which I don't imagine had a terribly big budget, that's not the one that's going to push things forward. And you already had the template from the original film.
Absolutely. It's a masterclass in practical effects. And American Werewolf in Paris is not the benchmark film for digital effects by any means.
Yeah.
Lawnmower Man outperforms it. And that film, you know, people kind of crap on it because it's a weird, goofy, you know, visually. You're like, yeah, but it makes sense in the context of what Lawnmower Man is. American Werewolf in Paris, I don't know who said yes. That is perfect. Even the poster looks terrible for that film. It looks like something you'd see in a bargain bin, probably spent a long time in a bargain bin. And it says if you go at Best Buy on a full moon in October and you dig in the bargain bin, you might find a DVD copy of American Werewolf in Paris.
And God be with you if you do. Just
stay there forever.
Yeah. Just quickly, just because you brought up Lawnmower Man, have you ever read the story that it's based on?
No.
It's a Stephen King short story. And it's about a guy who shows up to mow someone's lawn and basically immediately strips naked and starts crawling along the lawn, eating the grass and shitting. And like, that's it. And somehow they took that and got to what that movie was, with like VR, and to the point where like Stephen King sued to have his name taken off of it. Like it's so absurd how they got from that to that. It makes no sense to me.
What?
Yeah.
I did not know this.
Yeah.
You heard it here first, folks.
Amazing.
What a story. I might have to start reading books.
You should. Well, I think the Lawnmower Man is like maybe like 4 or 5 pages long. Like it's short. It's in one of his like collections, you know.
Does it take place in Maine?
Probably. I don't remember. It's been far too long, but
Jesus Christ.
Yeah. But yeah, so back to American Werewolf in Paris. Yeah, also like the plot is ridiculous because there's a doctor who, okay, so the female lead, I'm blanking on the actress's name, Julie Delpy, I think is her name. I guess she's a werewolf, but her father, I think, is a doctor who's created a serum that can keep her from changing.
Yeah.
But then there's like this gang of werewolves who run like a nightclub, and they're trying to steal the serum so they can control when they become werewolves because they want to be werewolves. And it's fucking dumb. It's a dumb movie.
It sounds like an abandoned Blade script, basically.
Yeah, kind of.
Or like they were like, hey, what was that film? Kate Beckinsale.
Oh, Is it the Resident Evil movies?
No. That's Mila Jovovich. I'm
Oh,
talking
Underworld.
Underworld. Yeah, it sounds very much like, hey, what if nope. Oh, hey, slap American Werewolf on that title.
Right.
We'll make no money off of it. Like, I don't know how that got where it did. Like, that's why I call it, as I said, it was the cinematic dark ages.
Yep.
Because you had that happening. You had Batman and Robin a couple years before it. You had and then The Matrix was in there. You had some good movies, but I think it's kind of the reason like conversations about horror taper off in the 90s because you had a few of these just you're like, what the hell? And then
right,
as it were. Yeah.
Yep. Pretty much. All right. Well, I think that pretty much wraps it up. And unless there's anything else you want to talk about with American Werewolf in London.
See it if you haven't.
Absolutely. It's a good one. It's a great one. It's probably my second favorite horror movie of all time after Exorcist 3. It's just so good. I mean, I have a t-shirt. I don't have an Exorcist 3 t-shirt. But yeah,
you should get one.
I should. But yeah, so we're gonna end the show there today. Before I do my little sign off, of course, Chris wasn't here today, but if you want to check out what he's doing online, go check out his Instagram feed, Art of Light and Shadow. He talks about the movies that he's watching. He has voting polls and all. He'll explain it better than I will, but go check him out there.
It's a great little Instagram channel.
It is.
Account if you want, because he injects a lot of information. I think, I don't know if he capped it off yet. He might have just capped it off because we're now entering the 2020s. He did like horror by decade, and it was a very, he wrote up these great little pieces. We got to convince this kid to open his own channel because he's so well spoken. Go check it out. In the meantime, he's equally good at writing.
Exactly.
Art of Light and Shadow on the Instagram.
Indeed. And of course, Andris, where can people check out your stuff?
If you do a YouTube search for Cheap Thrills, Unspeakable Terror, you can find my videos. I do reviews of low-budget sci-fi and horror from the dawn of cinema to the modern era. And
if you want to check me out on Instagram and Twitter, I don't do them very much, but it is at Courtshake. Of course, you're already on my channel on YouTube. If you haven't subscribed yet, I'd sure love you forever if you did. And of course, I just finished my coverage of the Toronto After Dark Film Festival. So some good genre fare. I even did a roundup of 6 Canadian and international short films. Some really good stuff in there, actually. Andris, I got to tell you about this one short film. I'll tell you about it later. It was fucking awesome.
Can't wait to hear it.
It was very funny. Check me out there, subscribe, all that good stuff. Of course, we would love to encourage you to drop a like on this video if you did enjoy it. Of course, it helps the channel grow. We appreciate that very much. Of course, jump into the comments. Tell us what you thought of An American Werewolf in London, or what you thought of Dune, or anything like that. And of course, you can get the audio-only version of this podcast at places like Spotify and Google Podcasts. So check that out if that's your poison. Andris, I imagine you will not be back next week, but Chris and I will be back, so who knows what we'll be talking about. Eternals might be out by then. Ooh. I don't remember, but we'll be back, and we will see you guys next week. Thank you again for watching, and as always, we hope that you guys are staying safe, staying healthy, taking care of each other, and we'll see you guys next week. Take care.
Wait, I won't be here next week, so happy Halloween, y'all.
Excellent. Yes, happy Halloween, everybody. Take care.